Welcome to Advocation X, episode number 65, part 2. The continuation of this monetary confusion. Time for a newsworthy monetary world broadcast, sponsored by Baden Optical in beautiful Ontario, Canada. Now hit that like button and subscribe. Help push our content higher in the YouTube algorithms. Topics to tackle here and now: fiat currency, savings, inflation, 68% dependence, return guidelines, European future. Let's dive deep right now. Fiat currency, which is so common in the Western societies. We might as well call it money with no value. Once the banks decided that debt was one of their biggest assets, they started to lobby and reduce the amount of actual cash on hand needed to hold the huge debts that they were lending out. Eventually, it went down to the fact that banks only had to hold 25% of the money they lent out. Example: if you deposited your paycheck of $1,000 into my bank, I could then go ahead and lend out $4,000 based on your $1,000. But you deposited the money on Monday, you decide on Tuesday you'd like that money back. So I tell you, I'm so sorry. I just don't have that kind of cash on hand. But give me some time, I'll get it for you. So what do? I call in some chits, I liquidate some assets, I call you in and I hand you your $1,000. The problem is, when it comes to large sums of money, and they've liquidated these loans that they've tried, or they could have at the time, there may not be enough to pay the people who are coming in to get their money back. And of course, that causes a crash. We don't know about the banks ever crashing, do we? And they're continuing to push the percentage of cash on hand lower and lower. It puts them in a situation for a run on the bank. And I'm sure in your lifetime, you've heard of a run on the bank. What does the bank do? They lock their doors until they can find a way to liquidate and get some actual cash or liquidity. Fiat currencies are not worth the paper they're printed on. Only if you go way back in our history, you will find that these notes issued from the banks, that we call money, of course, were actually backed by real assets, and our money was fairly safe. Okay, moving on to savings. Savings, as you have noticed, are not encouraged anymore and only net you such tiny interest. But with your savings, these loans are given out, netting the bank huge gains in interest. If you could get half the interest that they're charging on the loans, you'd be rich with only investments into your savings account. That means no stock exchange, just saving your money. So that quickly began to change until the scale tipped all the way in the favor of using your money to loan to others and gain huge in interest. It is time for us as people to return to the practice of saving for those rainy days, which we always have many. This present super bad cold illness should be showing everybody that the practice of saving had good reason behind it. Curious as to what you think. Is it time, in your opinion, for us to begin saving again? Or do you think, when this is over, we'll all go back to being rich folks and living on the edge as always? Inflation seems to be the method that most governments are now relying on in order to increase the coffers every year and provide for the lavish spending that they do ongoing. It is such folly for any country to allow its government to lead it down the road of inflationary vehicles to transport the country's people into the future. It is like sailing the ocean with a ship bottom made of rusting steel. You might get lucky and make it to the other coast, but certainly your return trip will not be so much fun. In my opinion, we must reduce the inflationary propping up of our institutions and begin to operate within all of our means. So let's move on. 68% of Americans are totally fine with sitting at home and getting pennies from the government. When asked, that was the percentage of people who decided that they were not ready to go back to work at all. So 32% of Americans are at the point at the end of their rope. And I truly do wish that they all can get back to the grind and feel useful again. Now, don't get me wrong. The 68% are comprised of those who are terrified by the news that they have been watching on a regular basis. Everywhere you move, everything you do, everywhere you go, it's being pushed in your face that this super bad cold illness requires that you feel guilty enough to not leave your house, except, of course, to go for a walk, or go for a jog, or perhaps to the grocery store, or maybe the pharmacy, or any other place that you deem necessary to go. I mean, it's obvious that you can leave your house. In my opinion, if you go for a walk, then what's wrong with walking for 12 hours of the day and crossing the city, saying hi to everybody you miss? What is wrong with me jogging to the adjacent city? What would be wrong with me shopping all day in every store and using that time to socialize with all the people that I meet? I'm still on my way home eventually. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are at high risk or have underlying issues which make you otherwise vulnerable, then I would hide you. I would. It's like I would in every illness season. If my grandfather were sitting at home and I wished to go visit him, but I had the sniffles and I was feeling under the weather, well, then it's probably a good idea that I don't go. If my children's noses are dripping all over the place because they have some sort of virus or cold or something else, well, then maybe I shouldn't go visit him that day. A phone call would suffice. He needs groceries. Why wouldn't I just go pick them up for him and bring them and leave them at his door? And that's in any super bad cold illness season. It's just a prevailing opinion among 32% of the populace that a return to normalcy, which, with precautions, should be achieved rapidly. Your economy is not worth your life. That is for certain. However, when you come back to your life, you may find that the national debts and the change in people's emotional state may limit your return to a fraction of what you remember. Just food for thought. So, my return guidelines, these are the ones I refer to, would allow for a reasonable return to life with minimal loss to the economy. Take Sweden, for example. They have some of the lowest death per capita in the Scandinavian world. They never closed their economy and told the people that they will trust them to do what they know is right. Some isolated, some took precautions on the street. Most wore masks when they felt it was necessary. And oddly enough, their economy has never had to shut down. Did they experience some hardship? Some loss of life? Absolutely. Just as any other country in their area and around the world has been experiencing. That is not to say that every country should do the same, because some have older populations. Some have higher rates of aggravating factors, while others may actually have amazing mitigating factors. Choice, and therefore real true liberty and freedom, are what is needed to make it through a crisis. Being isolated, cooped up, totally alone, fending for oneself with no resources except depending on the government to give you some sort of handout is not conducive to a healthy future. No, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at all. I am flabbergasted that everybody just ran and scattered like cockroaches. And not that I'm calling you a cockroach. I'm giving you the visual. You walk into a room, you turn on the light, and boom, they just disappear in an instant. Well, this is what we did. The government went boo, and we all scattered like cockroaches and went and hid in our little spaces. Come on, people. Come on. Anyways, hey, wait a second. I'm guilty too. Look, I've been cooped up for quite some time. You've seen my videos. You see where they're from. Okay, so let me tell you this. I'm a hypocrite. Like you're a hypocrite. Like you're a hypocrite and you're a hypocrite. And you, and you, and you, and you. You know why? We know what we want to do. But we go against what's right. And we do it anyway. We do so many things that we know we would advise others not to do. Why are we killing ourselves with no sunlight, no good fresh air, no activity, no human-to-human interaction? Do you know the bacteria and viruses that we are made of are constantly exchanging from body to body to body to body to body? Keeps us all strong and fit against other viruses that are transferring body to body to body to body? If we are not transferring those viruses and bacteria, do you realize we're becoming more and more susceptible to the super bad cold illness, which will cause a bigger scare and a longer stay at home? Come on, people. Let's go for a healthy future. Moving on. As it stands, the future looks pretty grim for those countries not ready to make extreme changes in the way they treat their people. A police state which will inevitably result from the direction most countries are now headed in will not be a favorable state for our life. For many of us, anyway. Some, who are on the top, will be sitting around laughing at how wonderful their life is and how we are subject to the laws and regulations and scrutiny that they are able to skirt. So there are certain countries gearing up to handle the security threats that will come from this horrific crisis. If things continue down this horrible path with 100% dictatorship as to how you run your moments, I predict you will soon begin to see your friends and some family members and neighbors being hauled away as horrible criminals when they did nothing wrong except ask to live out their lives as humans should be able to live, without being dictated to what must go on from moment to moment in your life, what you must ingest and have put inside your body without your consent, being forbidden from going to your job because you did not comply with the dictatorship. Once again, folks, it is choice, which equals freedom and liberty for all. So, I am praying that one major company steps forward and leads the way to free and prosperous future for us all. Please help further our cause by hitting the like button and subscribing for future content. Become a member and crush that bell while you're at it so you'll miss nothing going forward. Disclaimer, our channel is factually informed opinion, not the alternative fact type either. Your questions will be answered if you're a subscribed member of this channel. However, suggestions are more than welcomed, including your critical analysis. Leave your respectful comments, suggestions, critical analysis, and questions for further topics you'd like to have covered in the comment section. A special thanks from Clyde and the crew to all of you beautiful thinking people out there. A shout out to our sponsor, Baden Optical in beautiful Ontario, Canada. Once again, good folks, I must say, we never give up and we never give in. And remember, keep an open mind because knowledge is your power. So do the research so you maintain that power. Until next time, thank you for spending time with us here on this channel. Be safe and healthy. And please do your best to be as happy as humanly possible. Thanks again.